Top of the Gods. Chapter 1 Third-Rate Sects. The sky was like ink, and the sunset burned among the mountains, reflecting the figure of Lin Xian, a third-rate disciple of the King Yun sect. The worn-out jade pendant on Lin Xian's waist swayed in the wind, his eyes were resolute, but there was a little loneliness between his eyebrows. Disciples of the third-rate sect couldn't even touch the inner door, and it was almost impossible to achieve the Great Way. Xianer, you are thinking wildly again. Fellow senior brother Fang Yu smiled in his voice, but he couldn't bear it in his eyes. Lin Xian waved his hand, looked up at the sky in the distance, and thought to himself, if it were just ordinary practice, I, Lin Xian, would have been willing to do it long ago. But there is a voice in my heart that tells me that I should not only live in this third-rate fate. At this moment, a golden light fell from the sky, shattering the rocks in the valley, and the voice was like thunder, Lin Xian, inherit from me. Lin Xian's pupil shrank, and a divine figure appeared in the golden light, with cold eyebrows and eyes, holding a broken divine book in his hand. This was a turning point in his life, an inheritance from God. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 2 The Power of Inheritance. Lin Xian was wrapped in golden light, his whole body seemed to be compressed by time, his soul merged with the divine shadow, and a low and grand voice sounded in his ears, third-rate disciple, if you want to embark on the road of divine cultivation, you must forge your body with blood and fire, step through life and death, before you can become the master. When Lin Xian opened his eyes, he was already in a bizarre space. Ancient runes floated around, and there were hundreds of suspended stars in the sky, as if each one was telling a piece of history. This is divine domain. Lin Xian murmured, he could already feel the flow of divine power in his hands, pouring into his body like a flood. For the first time, he felt his potential, the awakening of his bloodline, the extension of his spirit, and even the air had a strange energy, as if every breath he took could enhance his mind. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 3 The Tribulation of the Sect. Lin Xian returned to the King Yun sect and found that the sect had been captured by foreign enemies, blood was splattered, and it was a problem for third-rate disciples to even escape for their lives. It turned out that this force came from the branch of the ancient god race, the Red Phoenix sect, and they vowed to eradicate all mortal monks. Senior brother, run away. Fang Yu shouted, the staff in his hand had already ignited blue flames. Lin Xian sneered, he felt the divine power surging, his body was like light, and he stepped into the eyes of the Red Phoenix sect master. In just 3 breaths, his fist shattered the space and went straight to the sect's throat. The Red Phoenix sect master was surprised, boy. Surprisingly. The blood was like rain, the Red Phoenix sect was shaken back, and Lin Xian understood for the first time that the inheritance of the gods would allow him to embark on a road of no return. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 4 Purgatory. Lin Xian embarked on the road of cultivating gods, and the first stop was the land of Purgatory. This was the junction between death and rebirth, where countless strong people died. His figure was like a streamer, stepping on the flame hell, but there was no fear in his eyes. You are that third-rate disciple. The fire-refining clan leader appeared in the center of the flames, and the long knife in his hand hovered like a flame dragon. That's right, I, Lin Xian, I'm going to step out of my blood here today. Lin Xian's voice was loud, his divine power burst out, his fist touched the long knife, the sky shook, the flames scattered, his divine power turned into a light shield, forcing the fire-refining clan leader to retreat 10 steps. The trials of Purgatory were extremely cruel, but every crisis increased Lin Xian's strength tenfold. The divine power in his body fused with the bloodline, his soul was like flames, and his flesh and blood were like steel. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 5 The Battle of the Holy Land. After passing through Purgatory, Lin Xian stepped into the holy place, Wanling Peak. This is the place where the gods have descended, and many god-level beings are hidden here. Lin Xian met a strong fellow Taoist and also met his former brother Fang Yu, but Fang Yu went astray due to his wrong cultivation and became a hostile force. Xianer, don't look back. Fang Yu's eyes flashed with blood, and his hands controlled the elements of heaven and earth, confronting Lin Xian head-on. In this battle, the heavens and the earth were reversed, the mountains and rivers were cracked, and the divine light was like a tide. Lin Xian used his divine power and inheritance to finally defeat Fang Yu, but did not kill him, but sealed his soul with the power of his bloodline, waiting for him to be reborn. underscore 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 un. Chapter 6: The Road to Destroying Gods. Lin Xian gradually understood that this path of cultivating gods was not only about improving strength, but also about the mission of competing with the gods. The mortal gods were full of conspiracies, wanting to control everything in the world. Lin Xian traveled all over the three realms, killed evil gods, broke the barrier of divine power, and gradually approached the true god. He was struck by lightning, his body was shattered, and he was reborn in the sea of blood. He had been hunted down by countless divine soldiers, and had also joined forces with all races to challenge the heavenly court. Every time he was on the verge of life and death, his bloodline was baptized to make it even more indestructible. Lin Xian's name began to spread all over the world, the enemy of all gods, the genius of cultivating gods, undefeated in life and death. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 7: Life and Death Hatred. The path of cultivating gods is not a solitary journey. Lin Xian met the King Yu Fairy on the way. Her beauty and wisdom were fascinating, but the hidden identity behind her was related to the Protoss. The relationship between the two is endlessly entangled. Trust and betrayal, love and hatred are intertwined. Xianer, are you really willing to crush everyone for the sake of strength? The Green Feather Fairy whispered, tears streaming down her face. Lin Xian held her hand, but he knew in his heart that only by stepping through life and death could he protect her and the world. He knew that love and hatred would eventually turn into the fuel for cultivating God, making him go higher and higher. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 8: The Ultimate Showdown. In the end, Lin Xian stepped into the nest of the gods and became an enemy of all gods. Heaven and earth are twisted like a picture scroll, divine power collides with each other, and light and darkness intertwine. Lin Xian stepped on the enemy's bones step by step, his fists turned into destruction, his divine power tore through the void, and finally faced the heavenly emperor, the strongest god. You challenge the divine realm with your mortal body. The heavenly emperor sneered. Lin Xian's eyes were like fire, and his bloodline and divine power fused to turn into the power of all gods. I, Lin Xian, am not just a mortal. I want to prove that the true strongest divine path belongs to those who have stepped through life and death and mastered faith. The battle was so fierce that the sky and the earth collapsed. Lin Xian finally defeated the Emperor of Heaven with the power of the shattered divine body, and the peak of all gods trembled for him. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 9: Dominating the Peak. Lin Xian stood on the top of all gods. The gods were wiped out, and the heavens and the earth returned to peace. He understood that the path of cultivating gods is not just strength, but the tempering of blood, emotions, and faith. The strongest is not in slaughtering gods, nor in control, but in being able to maintain one's heart in countless lives and deaths. Lin Xian smiled and looked at the world in the distance. Everything was under his control. Fairy King Yu walked over slowly, a smile in her eyes. You did it, Xianer. Lin Xian stretched out his hand and held her hand, knowing in his heart that this was the strongest Shinto and the most real life. In the end, Lin Xian concentrated his divine power in one punch, and the fist blasted like the sky shattering the body of the heavenly emperor. The void in the land of destiny trembled, the after-images of the gods turned into runes and merged into Lin Xian's body. He finally stood on top of all gods. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 12: The Top of All Gods. Standing on the top of all gods, Lin Xian overlooked the heavens and worlds, and the power of blood and divine power flowed in his body, rushing like a torrent. He understood that the path of cultivating gods is not simply the pursuit of strength, but the fusion of blood and fire, faith and emotion. The King Yu Fairy walked over slowly, with tears in her eyes. Xianer, you really did. Lin Xian held her hand and felt calm. I have stepped on life and death, and I have also stepped on all enemies. The true strongest Shinto is not just power, but protection and choice. In the sky, the remaining divine light turned into a rainbow bridge, and everything returned to peace. Lin Xian looked back into the distance and secretly made a new vow in his heart. This world, he will protect it, and will also explore the unknown limits. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 13: The New World. A few years later, Lin Xian became the master of the top of all gods. The remnants of the gods still exist in the void, but no one dares to challenge his reputation. Lin Xian traveled all over the three realms, exploring the mysterious ancient race, cultivating extreme spells, and even finding legendary divine weapons in the desolate ruins. He walks side by side with the Blue Feather Fairy, both brotherhood and love-hate entanglements, past enemies are transformed into allies, and the old sea of blood trials become the mark of his power. Lin Xian established the divine realm at the top of all gods and opened it to aspiring monks, and his inheritance would become a guide for future cultivators, but only those who are truly brave, resolute, and know how to trust and protect can touch the true divine path. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 14 The final chapter, the Supreme Shinto. Lin Xian stood on the top of all gods, the light of the setting sun shone on the heavens and the earth, and the whole world seemed to pay tribute to him. He understands that the top of all gods is not only a symbol of strength, but also the ultimate manifestation of responsibility and faith. The strongest is not to step on the bones, but to know how to bear it. Lin Xian whispered. Fairy King Yu smiled and said, I wish to stand guard with you at the summit of the 10,000 gods. Lin Xian clenched her hand, feeling calm in his heart. The path of cultivating gods will never be alone, and the real strongest god is to achieve oneself and protect all living beings in the interweaving of light and shadow and blood. Chapter 15 The Labyrinth of the Illusion. When Lin Xian was temporarily resting at the peak of all gods, he learned that the illusion maze left by the ancient gods had not yet been solved. This labyrinth floats in the void, surrounded by bizarre runes and countless illusions, each of which may lead to life and death, or may bring infinite treasures. This fantasy realm. Is it a trial left by God? Lin Xian thought to himself, stepping into the maze. In the maze, time and space were intertwined, and Lin Xian was facing the phantoms of his past, the poor days of the third-rate sect, the extreme pain of the sea of blood trials, and the moment of Fang Yu's betrayal. Every step seemed to torment his mind. He gritted his teeth and injected divine power into his bloodline to dissolve the distortion of the illusion. Step by step, after each phantom dissipated, it turned into power and merged into Lin Xian's body, making him stronger than before. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 16 The Battle of the Sky. Traveling through the fantasy realm, Lin Xian came to the land of the heavens. This place was the sealing place of the ancient divine soldiers, and countless powerful divine powers floated in the void. The Guardian is an ancient deity, the Flame God King, who controls the extreme power of fire and thunder and lightning. Mortal, do you dare to break into the sky? The Yanhuang God King's voice was like thunder, and flames and thunder erupted at the same time. Lin Xian did not flinch, his fist turned into red light, the power of the bloodline and the divine power were intertwined, turning the elements of heaven and earth into his own weapons. During the battle, he unleashed an unprecedented divine fist, tearing through the void with every blow. The Yanhuang God King was forced to retreat, and finally turned into countless runes and dissipated. The seal of the divine weapon was lifted, and Lin Xian obtained the ancient divine weapon, the World Annihilation Red Flame Spear. The gun body glowed with red flames, and holding it in his hand, he felt the power of destroying heaven and earth flowing in his body. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 17 Brotherhood. When Lin Xian was exploring the divine realm, he accidentally discovered that the sealed Fang Yu was still alive. He used his divine power and bloodline to rescue Fang Yu, although Fang Yu lost some of his divine power, but the brotherhood between the two became stronger as a result. Xianer, I'm sorry. I once betrayed you. Fang Yu whispered, with remorse in his eyes. Lin Xian held his hand, the past is no longer important. In the future, we will go through life and death together and achieve God. The two brothers stand side by side, the power of bloodline is intertwined, and countless powerful enemies reappear, and they join forces to resist the monsters and rebels in the divine realm, showing unmatched tacit understanding and strength. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 18 The Gods Fight Back. Lin Xian entered the depths of the divine realm, finally facing a counterattack from the gods. The gods gathered, hundreds of them using the divine realm as a battlefield, launching a deadly attack on Lin Xian and Fang Yu. Heaven and earth crumbled, the void shook, and thunder and fire intertwined into a torrent of destruction. Lin Xian raised the World Annihilation Red Flame Spear, the blood and divine power fused, turning into a red torrent, step by step through the enemy's afterimage. He and Fang Yu cooperated tacitly, every blow shattered the void, and every punch turned into a heaven-destroying power. In the end, Lin Xian used the extreme fusion of bloodline and divine power to seal the remnants of the gods, and the top of all gods was completely stable. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 19 The Divine Realm Master. Lin Xian stood at the peak of the 10,000 gods, his blood and divine power flowed like a torrent, and the order of the world was rebuilt because of him. He understands that the pinnacle of power is not just about shattering enemies but about controlling the balance and guarding order. Fairy Qingyu and Fang Yu stood beside him. The hatred and misunderstanding they had once had been resolved by the bloodline trial and the fusion of life and death. Lin Xian shared his power and wisdom with the new generation of god cultivators, establishing the divine realm of all gods, so that mortal monks could gradually challenge their limits. This road has just begun. Lin Xian looked into the distance, his eyes burning with endless divine light. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 20 Light and Shadow are supreme. After Lin Xian established the divine realm at the peak of all gods, he traveled all over the ruins and forbidden lands between heaven and earth, and took control of the wisdom and divine power of the ancient gods, demons, and ancient races. He understood that the strongest Shinto is not alone, but can take into account protection and power in the interweaving of light and shadow. His figure stood like a god, his light illuminated the heaven and earth, and all things submitted to order and balance. Fairy Qingyu whispered, Xianer, all this. You did it. Lin Xian held her hand and whispered, the real strongest god is not only strength, but faith, protection, and choice. Underscore 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 un. Postscript. The road of cultivating gods is the tempering of blood and fire, and the interweaving of life and death and faith. Lin Xian went from a third-rate disciple to the ruler of all gods. Every step was full of difficulties and challenges, and every life and death was a baptism of the soul. Love and hatred, brotherly loyalty, betrayal, and protection all turned into nutrients for cultivating gods, and finally achieved his unrivaled Shinto. This is an epic story of courage, faith, blood, emotion, and choice. The top of all gods is not only a symbol of strength, but also the ultimate manifestation of protection and wisdom. The real strongest Shinto is to achieve oneself in the interweaving of light and shadow and blood, protect heaven and earth, and step through life and death without losing one's heart.